Man, I was buzzing with excitement as I pulled into the driveway. A whole day earlier than planned. I was picturing the look on Jess's face, how she'd jumped into my arms, and little Sammy's laughter. But then, there it was, this shiny red Mazda I'd never seen before parked right where my old Chevy should be. Confusion hit me like a sucker punch. I got out, my heart already doing this weird drum. The front door was unlocked. But inside, the house was too quiet. Then, from upstairs, laughter. Not the innocent kind, but something else, something that made my gut twist. I took the stairs two at a time, a bad feeling creeping up my spine, and there they were, Jess and Mike. Mike, my golf buddy, in our bedroom with my wife. They didn't even hear me come in, too caught up in there, whatever it was. My world stopped. It was like watching a car crash in slow motion, and I was the guy in the driver's seat. Jess saw me first. Her eyes went wide, like she'd seen a ghost. Mike, that jerk, he just froze, sheet barely covering him. The room spun, and every corny line from every bad movie about cheating spouses played in my head. What the hell, Jess? I remember my voice sounded weird, like it was someone else talking. She started babbling, trying to cover up, saying it wasn't what it looked like. Yeah, right. Mike mumbled something, looking for his clothes. I couldn't even look at him. This was a guy I'd shared beers and secrets with. And now this? How long? That was all I could muster. Jess was crying now, saying it was a mistake, that it meant nothing. But her words, they sounded hollow, empty. I felt this rage building up, but at the same time, I was just broken, you know? The argument got heated. I was throwing words like bullets, not caring where they hit. Jess was pleading, saying she was sorry, that she'd been lonely. I didn't want to hear any of it. It was like watching our life together turn to ashes right there. I stormed out, leaving her crying and Mike scrambling to get dressed. The last thing I heard was Jess calling my name, but it was too late. Something had shattered inside me, something I knew couldn't be fixed. I drove off, my mind a mess of anger, betrayal, and 1,000 questions with no answers. How long had it been going on? Had everyone known but me? The hurt was a physical thing, clawing at my chest. So much for the surprise homecoming. Huh? Never thought I'd be sitting in a dingy motel room. My life turned upside down. Just yesterday, I was on top of the world, coming home early to surprise my family. Now, here I am, staring at peeling wallpaper, trying to digest Jess's confession. A long-term affair, with my best friend, no less. It felt like a bad dream, except I couldn't wake up. Jess cried her eyes out, saying it started as something small, something meaningless. But you know what? It didn't matter how it started. It mattered that it happened. She kept saying she was sorry, that she never meant to hurt me. Sorry? That word seemed so small, so useless now. I couldn't stay there. Not another second. I grabbed my keys, walked out, and just drove. No destination, no plan, just the need to be anywhere but there. The roads were empty, kind of like how I felt inside, hollow, echoing with every word Jess had said. Ended up at this motel on the outskirts of town. The guy at the front desk gave me a look, probably thought I was up to no good. If only he knew. I crashed on the bed, but sleep was a stranger that night. My mind replayed every moment of our marriage, searching for signs I must have missed. Morning came, and with it, a decision. I couldn't let this slide. I found a divorce lawyer online, someone discreet. We met at a coffee shop, away from prying eyes. I couldn't risk Jess or anyone else finding out before I was ready. The lawyer, Mr. Henderson, was a straight shooter. He laid it out plain and simple. Divorce was messy, but given the circumstances, it was straightforward. Then he dropped a bombshell I hadn't even considered. The paternity test. Sammy, my boy. Was he even mine? That hit me harder than the affair. The thought of losing Sammy, of him not being mine. It was like a punch to the gut. Mr. Henderson said it was standard procedure in these cases, but nothing about this felt standard. I agreed to the test, not knowing it was eating me up inside. Henderson arranged everything discreetly. I drove back to the motel, feeling like a character in some tragic movie. Except this was real life, my life, and I had no idea how this scene was going to end. You know, they say hope's a dangerous thing. Can lift you up, then drop you from 100 feet. I was clinging to this thin thread of hope that Sammy was mine. But when I got those paternity test results, that thread snapped. Not my kid. Not my son. I can't describe that feeling. Like falling into a cold, dark pit. I confronted Jess. Had to. I needed to hear it from her. Needed her to look me in the eyes and say it. She was at home, looking like a ghost of herself. When I showed her the test results, she just crumbled. Everything came out. The affair, the lies, and yeah, Sammy. He was conceived during her fling with Mike. I remember she kept saying she was sorry, but it sounded so far away. My mind was racing, heart pounding in my ears. It was surreal, you know? Here was this woman I'd loved, trusted, and she'd just torn our world apart. Sammy, the kid I'd raised, played with, loved. He wasn't mine. The betrayal stung. But losing Sammy, that was a whole other kind of pain. Filing for divorce felt like the only thing left to do. I couldn't stay with Jess, not after all this. The trust was gone. Love turned to ash. It's funny, in a sad way. You think you know someone, share your life with them, and then one day, it's like you never knew them at all. I met with Mr. Henderson again, told him I wanted to file for divorce, citing Jess's infidelity. He didn't seem surprised. Maybe he's seen it all before. Paperwork, signatures, legal jargon. It was all a blur. I was just going through the motions, like a robot. Jess pleaded with me, said we could work it out for Sammy's sake. But how do you stay for a child that isn't yours? How do you look past such a lie? I couldn't. Maybe I was weak, maybe I was angry, but I just couldn't. That night, in the quiet of my motel room, I thought about everything. The happy days, the laughs, the plans we'd made. All gone. I thought about Sammy, how his laughter used to fill up the house. Now, there was just this deafening silence, a void where my heart used to be. I know some people bounce back from stuff like this. They find a way to forgive, to rebuild. But for me, it was the end of a chapter. A painful, gut-wrenching chapter. I had to close it, had to try and find a way to start over. Alone. Ever had that moment when you're standing at the edge of a cliff, knowing you gotta jump but scared as hell? That was me, the day Jess begged me for another chance. She was crying, promising she'd change, that we could fix things. But some breaks, they're just too deep to mend. I told her no. It was the hardest word I'd ever had to say. Part of me still loved her, you know, but a bigger part was just done. Too much hurt, too many lies. I was determined to move on, to find some semblance of peace. That's when the real storm hit. Divorce proceedings started, and man, it was like opening Pandora's box. Everything got public and messy, real fast. Our once quiet, happy life became the talk of the town. People I'd known for years, neighbors, friends, they all had something to say about it. Word got out about Jess's affair. It spread like wildfire, the kind of juicy gossip that small towns thrive on. I'd go to the grocery store and hear whispers, see the looks. It was like we were on display. Our private pain turned into public spectacle. And then, the picking side started. It's crazy how these things go down. Friends we'd had dinner with, celebrated holidays with, suddenly they were choosing camps. Some sided with Jess, trying to be sympathetic to her. Mistakes. Others patted me on the back, saying I was better off without her. Family tensions rose too. Jess's parents, they wouldn't even look at me, like I was the one who'd done something wrong. My own folks were furious, said they'd always had a bad feeling about her. I didn't need their "I told you so's," but there they were, served up at every family dinner. Everywhere I went, it felt like I was walking through a minefield. Old friends became strangers, strangers became judges. I'd see Mike sometimes, in town, and the anger would bubble up all over again. But I kept my cool, mostly. Didn't want to give the town more to talk about. This whole process, it wasn't just about signing papers and splitting assets. It was like reliving the betrayal, over and over. Every legal document, every court date. It was a reminder of what we'd lost, of how far we'd fallen. But through it all, I kept my focus. I had to get through this, had to close this chapter of my life. The house, the memories, Jess, even the friends who turned their backs, they were all part of a past I needed to leave behind. I was looking forward to that final court date, to the moment when I could finally say I was free. Free to start over, to rebuild. It was a faint light at the end of a very dark tunnel, but it was something. Something to hold on to. Life's got this funny way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. After the whirlwind of the divorce, I thought I'd seen it all. But then came the news that Mike, the guy who'd helped turn my life upside down, had bailed on Jess. Scared of the public scorn, he took off, leaving her to face the music alone. Can't say I was surprised, but part of me felt a weird satisfaction. Karma, right? In the midst of all this, the custody battle for Sammy was raging. It was the hardest part, fighting for a kid I'd raised as my own, but who wasn't my blood. The court saw things my way, though. They looked at Jess's infidelity, her unstable situation, and they granted me custody. Winning felt bittersweet. I was glad to have Sammy, but the circumstances, man, they were messed up. The divorce settlement was another blow to Jess. She lost the majority of our shared assets. The house, some of our joint savings, it all came to me. I didn't want it to be a battle, but things just played out that way. Jess was left struggling, both financially and socially. Her affair had cost her more than she probably ever imagined. I started anew, got myself a small apartment. It was nothing fancy, but it was a fresh start. A place free of all the memories that haunted me in our old home. Decorating it, filling it with new stuff. It felt like I was slowly piecing my life back together, one day at a time. Jess, on the other hand, she had it rough. I heard through the grapevine that she was struggling to make ends meet. Her social circle had shrunk too, with most of our mutual friends siding with me. I won't lie, there was a part of me that thought she got what she deserved. But another part, maybe the part that once loved her, felt sorry for her. Life in my new apartment was different. It was quieter, less chaotic. I missed the noise sometimes, missed the family life I thought I had. But this new silence gave me space. Space to think, to reflect, to figure out who I was without Jess. Sammy visited on weekends. It was hard, explaining to him why things had changed, why Mom and Dad weren't together anymore. I tried to keep it simple, tried to shield him from the ugly truths. He was just a kid, after all. Seeing him in my new place, laughing and playing, it gave me hope. Hope that maybe we could get through this, that we could find some semblance of normalcy in this new life. As for Jess, I heard she moved to a smaller place, something more affordable. People said she was looking for work, trying to get back on her feet. Part of the town still whispered about her, about what she'd done. I guess some stains are hard to wash off. It's strange, how life works out. One day you're up, the next you're down. But through it all, you just keep going, keep moving forward. That's what I was doing, one step at a time, in my little apartment, with Sammy by my side. Life, has a way of turning around when you least expect it. Amidst all the chaos, something good started happening. My business, which I'd poured my heart into, suddenly began to take off. It was like the universe saying, "Hey, it's your time now." Success brought a new kind of energy, a reason to get out of bed each morning with a smile. But just as things were looking up for me, Jess reached out. She wanted to talk, said she missed us, wanted to try again. But for me, that ship had sailed. I couldn't go back to what we had, not after everything. So, I declined, as gently as I could. It wasn't about revenge, it was about moving forward. Jess's life, meanwhile, took a nosedive. She was facing isolation, not just from our old friends but from her own family too. Her parents, who'd once treated me like a son, now disowned her. They were ashamed of her actions, couldn't understand how she'd thrown away what we had. It was sad, really. I knew Jess was struggling, trying to find her way back to some kind of normalcy, but it seemed like the world had turned its back on her. Back in our little town, people started looking at me differently. Where once there were whispers and stares, now there was sympathy, understanding, and even support. I'd bump into old friends at the grocery store, and instead of awkward silence, there were pats on the back, kind words. It was comforting, sure, but it also felt a bit surreal. I was the same guy, just a bit more broken, a bit more cautious. It was tough hearing about how Jess's parents had disowned her. Despite everything, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of pity. That was someone I had loved, someone I had planned to spend my life with, and now, she was out there, alone, cut off from the people who should have been her support system. In a way, our roles had reversed. I used to be the one shrouded in whispers and pity. Now it was Jess. I'd be lying if I said there wasn't a small part of me that felt vindicated. But mostly, it just made me sad. Sad for what we had lost, for what could have been. My business success kept me busy, kept my mind off the mess of my personal life. It was a blessing, really. Work became my sanctuary, a place where I could create, grow, and forget about the heartache for a while. As for Jess, I heard she was trying to rebuild bridges, but it was a slow process. People's memories are long, and forgiveness doesn't come easy in a small town. I hoped, for her sake, she'd find some peace, some way to make amends and move forward. Life's too short to live in perpetual regret. And me? I was just taking it one day at a time, enjoying the little successes and learning to live again. The business, my little beacon of hope, was growing, and so was I. Life's a roller coaster, huh? Just when you think you're stuck in a loop, it shoots you off in a new direction. That's how I felt when I started dating again. Casual stuff, nothing serious. It was like dipping my toes in the after years of being afraid to swim. It felt good, liberating even, to meet new people, to have conversations that weren't weighed down by my past. Meanwhile, Jess moved to a smaller town. A fresh start, I guess. I couldn't blame her. The air in our town was thick with whispers about us, especially her. But you know how small towns are. News travels fast, and so do rumors. I heard through the grapevine that her new community was already wary of her because of her past. It's tough, starting over with that kind of baggage. In the midst of this, Sammy reached out to me. The kid was confused and hurt, and who could blame him? His world had been turned upside down just like mine. It was a tricky situation. He wasn't my biological son, but those years of raising him, they meant something. They meant a lot, actually. So, I decided to maintain a role in his life, distant, but supportive. I couldn't just turn my back on the kid. That wouldn't be fair to him. Navigating these new relationships wasn't easy. Dating felt like walking through a minefield blindfolded. I was always careful, didn't want to rush into anything. The women I met, they were great, but I kept them at arm's length. Couldn't risk getting too close. Not yet. I was still healing, still figuring out who I was outside of my marriage. And Sammy, he needed me. In his own way. We'd meet up, grab a bite to eat, talk about school, sports, normal stuff. I could see the questions in his eyes, the ones he was too scared to ask. Why aren't you and Mom together anymore? Why did everything change? I tried to answer as best as I could without hurting him more. I wanted to protect him from the ugly truths. Jess's situation weighed on me, despite everything. I heard about her struggles, about how she was trying to rebuild her life in a place where nobody trusted her. It wasn't easy for her, and part of me felt guilty for that. But then I'd remember the betrayal, and that guilt would fade. She made her choices, and those choices had consequences. Life was moving forward, slowly but surely. Dating, dealing with the fallout of the divorce, maintaining a connection with Sammy, it was a lot. But I was managing, finding a new rhythm in this strange dance of life. There were moments of loneliness, moments of doubt, but I was learning to trust again, to open up, to maybe, just maybe, find love again.